This is From the Desk with Jada Montemarano. Conversations with the innovators, leaders, and experts who are shaping the future of human resources through cutting-edge technology, only on the Purple Acorn Network.
Welcome back to From the Desk with Jada Montemarano, the podcast where we explore the world of HR. We'll discuss trends, hot topics, and dive into the tools that help organizations improve how they attract, retain, and support their people, while also sharing how job seekers can land the perfect role during this tumultuous time. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. This is From the Desk with me, Jada Montemarano, where we bring the hottest HR news right from the desk to you. And today's guest is Kristina Karcic, a business advisor in the HR world with over 20 years of experience. Kristina's work spans high growth tech, large scale enterprises, cutting edge systems, but her mission is crystal clear. There's a better way to build companies, one that is intentional, scalable, and deeply rooted in strategy. She's here to share how rethinking HR by creating inclusive cultures and visionary leadership can unlock transformative growth. So this is more than a conversation about HR, but a blueprint for building your companies with strong foundations. So thank you so much for joining the show today, Kristina.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we'll just start off easy, simple. You've been in this HR world, as I like to say, for a long time. You have a lot of experience. So what was your initial intro into it? What were you doing that now you're an advisor?
Actually, my intro into HR is quite funny. Now I'm going to date myself. So, when I was going to school, undergrad at the time, I was working at like the original startup. It was the dot-com era, and I was working for a call center, got in, working full time, managing both. And I started out just in sales and then was curious and started applying some of the things that I was learning. Now, I was a psych undergrad. So, one of the things I noticed was we weren't rewarding people based on things that would actually be productive and move the organization forward. There was definitely this big gap. I did not know at the time, but what I ended up proposing and creating was a performance management system for sales and customer service, which is pretty hilarious. But I did that, and then we ended up acquiring a warehouse, and that went into quality control, QC. And this is just a funny part that I'll add is that the general manager at the time, when I had turned 21, my entire team like threw me a party and they had all these things on my desk, happy 21st birthday. And he came over and he's like, "This is a great joke. Like, how old are you really?" I was like, "No, I'm really 21." He was like,
Hey,
"Wait,
you
what?"
create at a young age. I feel you.
But with that, I said, I finally realized what I was doing. And I was like, okay, I want to get into HR. And when I initially got in, I'll be honest with you, I hated it because it was extremely tactical and there was no human element to it. There was no business element to it. So that's why I went back to school. I found my passion. I realized as HR professionals, the power we did hold to really make impact and most importantly, drive the bottom line while creating an inclusive environment because they do and they can and they should work well together.
I didn't even really know what went into HR even before starting the show. So it's very funny. You kind of said the same thing. You're like, wait a second, we all of this happens. How do we make this work? How do we hire people? When you hear the word HR, I don't think from the other side, at least the employee, you don't know really what goes behind the scenes there. So after you kind of grew in the career and knew that was something that you wanted to get into, I know you worked with a lot of tech startups. So is there a reason why you wanted to kind of stay in that lane for a bit?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I found my love when I came over into tech. And the reason being is number one, you're a builder. Number two, you can be creative. So it just allowed for an environment where you could be really agile and think outside the box. And I got really fortunate. The first company I got an opportunity to really do this was at Sitesense. And I was really fortunate because we had a visionary CEO that wanted and knew the importance of creating a people first organization and how, most importantly, that translates to the customer and really drives performance. So, with the chief people officer, we were able to basically create an award winning organization culture, which was really, really exciting. So, it's not just me saying, hey, we did something great. We received recognition from Gartner, from Forrester on our culture, on our DEI. It was a lot of work. And I'll be honest with you, we got a lot right and we got a lot wrong, but that's all about learning and growing as well. So I love this space. It's a lot of chaos, but that drives me. I love a challenge. So that's why I'm happy in this space.
In your opinion, what is broken with the HR model, the traditional way these companies are doing it, or maybe the not traditional way? Maybe they're going in ways that are even worse. So, what do you think is kind of broken really right now?
There's a couple of things that are actually broken. I think from an HR perspective, one of the things, and I'll be honest, I got this wrong many times, is you look at at an organization and you treat it as a whole, right? Say for example, performance management. Okay, we're going to have one system for the entire organization. We forget the psychology of HR, right? And that people are motivated differently. They appreciate rewards differently. So thinking of your organization and thinking of the personas that exist within it become really, really critical in driving high performance, right? Because your sales, your account executive is going to think very differently and want different things than your top engineer. So, how do you create that? How do you think about that so that you unlock its potential and you really truly drive a high performance culture? But that's pretty much in everything. And I know I said this before, but I think oftentimes we forget the strategy should drive everything. Now, in particular, when we're talking about startups, this is where I think HR professionals have such an opportunity to get in and get in early to help drive these conversations. And this is what I'm hoping to help. Hopefully change is the perception and when to bring HR in. Typically, a lot of organizations, I know you've seen it, they'll either bring young talent in, and I just mean not young in your profession, right? That's kind of guessing at what to do, what to implement. And they're like, okay, we can get away with that until we get to 100, 200, then we'll bring in somebody more experienced. But what you end up doing with that is adding a bunch of chaos, right? And you then have to go back, rip stuff out, do things again. Instead, I highly encourage founders to look at fractional executives, to bring them in earlier, to help them facilitate those strategy discussions. But you really need to know your business because that's where we could be a huge value. We know the talent, we know, the struggles of go to market, of R&D, and we can be that voice at the table. Of course, we're not the SMEs, no way, but we're there to help facilitate so that you actually take a strategy and you make it actionable. Because how many times have you seen those strategies that go in 20 different directions that are completely not going to attain anything in the end, right? But then once you take that, how do you start to build out the organization with appropriate structures and processes? And I almost hate using the word processes. Instead, I like to say frameworks because when you're young, you need to be agile. So I do think frameworks are really important. I do think such as operating models are critical. But the thing is that do you want to take something and apply a 50, 60-page document to a young company? Absolutely not. You want to make that scalable. You want to make that right for that organization. But by establishing blocks that are really critical, like IT infrastructure, security, how you're going to communicate, role definition. These things become critical because that allows you to be agile and innovative, as long as you're also thinking about the org design, not for today, but for tomorrow. Because one thing that I think HR kept getting wrong is we were just trying to like figure it out as we go. And how many people had 4 or 5 managers in a 2-year span? And that's not unrealistic. That's the reality, right? Like we have to do better for our people. But in the end, if you apply some of these concepts that have been proven that work in big organizations, but you truly tailor it and customize it to that particular organization, you're going to get board approval, board buy-in, right? So it's bigger than just the employees. They're going to get behind you and say, hey, wait, you guys know what you're doing. You can grow and scale sustainably. That changes the game, right? So now your visionary founder, executives, they're not just executives for a period or two, but they're for the longevity because you've set the organization up to scale. You're thinking about that operating model, the IT infrastructure, that if it's not established in the beginning, can grow like a monster. Your data's a mess from it. Like we could talk for days, I'm sure, about all the outcomes that come from that. So going back to your original question a little while ago, as HR professionals, where have we gotten it wrong? I think at the end, to sum that up, it's looking at adding psychology, understanding that people think differently, communicate differently, and being able to apply that to what we do so that this way our message gets across, but our programs also take that into consideration. And then really truly leading with the business mind first, right? Like, and I always say I'm a business executive first. I'm a strategist, and then I'm passionate about all things people. Because without that, I really can't be the person I want to really be that true consultative voice, if that makes sense.
Because it's true the way you're explaining it. Your company can't grow and be successful if you don't have the workers to help it grow and be successful. It really does go hand in hand. And I get what you're saying as well. Usually, when you're just starting out and you have three employees, you're like, I don't have money or time or energy to handle infrastructure on that. Let's just like get there. But then it's a little bit too late. So, what are, I guess, some of those mistakes that early companies make? Is it just not doing HR?
It's not strategically thinking about it. And even honestly, later stage, don't think about some critical elements that really set you up for success. So if we talk about it first and foremost, and it some people look at me a little strange. I always say, start with defining who you are and who your leader should be, right? Define what does it mean to be a leader within this organization and clearly define the levels. You don't have to go crazy. I always say define who your executive management is, who should be part of that. And as corny as it is, like think of it like taxes, right? You need representation. You want to drive a strategy that's successful, have representation. Think about the critical elements of your organization and it's who should be at that table, right? And I think sometimes we get so stuck with like traditional hierarchy. That's the way we think, and it actually hurts us in the end. And that's why I think we need to, as as a tech world, we like to be creative. This is where we need to break free of, right? Who's going to be your senior leadership and who will be your people leaders? That starts to build your performance management early on. But how amazing if you can come in as a leader, number one, know that your values align with the organization's and you're like, yeah, I can be successful. And then when you come in, you have clarity on what you need to be, who you need to be. You can develop your leadership development program so that they're effective around that, right? All of those nuances. Another key element that's also often forgotten is we start with the strategy. What's our talent strategy? How are we going to build this out? Actually, before you get there, I say, what is your talent philosophy? Have alignment on how you're going to hire, how are you going to reward. If you have that at the executive and senior leadership level, then when you build your strategy, you'll have alignment and you'll have buy-in. And I've made that mistake. I can say clearly where, I jumped to strategy and we accomplished all these wonderful things. And everybody's like, no, you didn't, because I thought you should be focusing on this. I'm like, wait, what? So creating that alignment at all levels early on is what helps you really move forward. And what I'm trying to solve for is all the things that break an organization and then sometimes actually hinder it from even continuing any type of growth. So you have this amazing idea, but you get in your own way. So how do we learn from the past and apply methodologies that are true and proven, but get creative with them so that they work for our world?
And of course, you worked with or are working with a lot of startups, companies in their early stages. But if anyone is listening who's further along, they are in a bigger company, a bigger business, they are a CEO or a founder, or even just an HR professional. Do you have any tips that you've learned from starting with newer businesses that they can take for businesses that are already, implemented, maybe been around for 20 years? Just want to shake
Absolutely.
things
So
up.
no, actually, so I work with startups and that is a passion of mine. But I do also work with companies that are in transition because how many times you go into an organization and you realize you don't have these key components. So again, it always comes back to starting with the strategy, where are you trying to go, and then defining it. But putting all those elements and thoughts into it to be proactive instead of reactive and trying to constantly keep up with it. You really want to create that structure for your team because we talk about agility and innovation all the time, but it's really simple. Just create the framework for them so that they can exist within that. And it's sometimes it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's never cut and paste. You have to think about the culture you want to create. How do that all those elements fit in? Because, and I should have mentioned that earlier, defining the culture and the values are really critical in the beginning. But when you're going through transformation, they're equally as critical because what you have might not work for where you're trying to go. And I'll give you, if you don't mind, I'll give you an example. Like there was a company I was working with and we were reevaluating everything because they were in transition and we're looking at their values. And I said, look, these don't unlock what you're trying to do. Like, let's make them tangible so that they're tied and they're going to drive that high performance. And the biggest one was they had a value of kindness. Now, yeah, I swear to you, I'm very kind. But in the business sense, what does that mean? What is that driving person? And so I said, no, you want to focus on the customer? Let's change this. Let's make this customer focused. Now people have more guidance of what kind means, because kind can mean anything, right? So it's those type of things. I mean, and I'll give you one more on the other end. It's an organization where it was be a hacker. Yeah, being a hacker can not be a good thing sometimes. And I'm not saying to get rid of it, but defining it, right? And so you need that at all transitions, a great change management program. We can't go in and just start ripping things up without, number one, knowing what is in existence, what is really good. There's always going to be good, and know that DNA and then rebuild from that. But you have to be very strategic in doing that and making sure that you're learning from your past and you're setting up the infrastructure for that growth, if that makes sense.
It does. And a lot of what you've been talking about is tangible things that people can do, humans can do, right? But as I've learned from doing the show over the past year, the HR world has been completely changing. AI is taking over, of course. So, in your experience now doing this for so long, you seem to really like to focus on the people. How have you kind of worked out the technology AI aspect now that is all over HR into your strategies that you think are successful?
Well, I completely adapted it. So even though I'm very people centric, believe it or not, I actually came up from systems. So I'm a huge proponent of having the right systems in place. Don't do it manually, because that's going to be able to drive the insights that you can gather to determine if you're on track or not, right? So actually, I am beyond excited because I came from a big organization. Actually, the first one of the first roles I took, I was part of a large M&A, and we were bringing an ERP system into, we're talking enterprise organization. And I saw the value. I saw the value of everything being systemized, and, the workflows and everything that, you can benefit from, most importantly, the data. With that, and also eliminating some of the redundant tactical work. With that said, we really struggled in the last 10 years, because when you're a small business, you're a startup, it's hard to get those systems and infrastructures. When you did, you had to kind of cut and paste and put them together and see how you can make it look like an ERP. Now, with the growth of AI, I mean, we're seeing these amazing systems come into play that really service our our industry and our sector like they would, an ERP and enterprise account. So like some of them, and I'll mention a finance system that's really cool out there as well. They're basically doing that. They're taking an enterprise and they're saying, hey, we're going to be able to deliver this to you. So that means as an organization, we can operate more efficiently. So I think AI is going to unlock that. But then even for what I'm doing, I mean, I don't think of a day that I don't use AI for research, and I do not use it to write. I'm gonna preface with
All your emails are from you.
that. But, AI can be, and, this is one thing that some people don't think of. Like, I've been in the business a long time. I went to graduate school. I've learned a lot. I read a lot. Do I remember who I learned what from? So what I love to do is, like, when I'm writing something, I'll put my thoughts and ideas in. I'll throw it into ChatGPT. Number one, say, is this factual? Number two, can you source this for me? Because I know I'm not the mind that came up with this. And then I'm able to give credit where credit is due, even though I don't remember where I learned it from. So there are so many uses for AI. I'm a absolute cheerleader for it.
And we spoke about that. And I usually like to end my show kind of broadening it out, talking about the future. So we are learning that AI is the current future of HR, but everybody's been telling me it's continuing to change. So, is there anything else that you see coming down the pipeline? Do you see HR changing even more? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think HR is going to change more, but the overall way of working is going to change. I think that we're going to have to be more adaptable and think about how do we support businesses. And one of the things, actually, I'm in the process of writing right now an article on it, is that I think the workforce is going to change, and Organizations that rely on internal HR departments are going to have the opportunity to rely on fractional professionals that are going to be able to provide the experience they need for what we're talking about for building scalable and sustainable, but at a fraction of the cost. And it's not just HR. Think about some of the other back office support. I think you're going to be able to go a little further along before you have to build something internal. And that's one area that's going to be impacted, I feel at least.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christina, for joining the show today and sharing your knowledge on everything going on in the HR world. I love your approach of focusing on the people and the culture because I really do think that makes companies more successful too.
Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you all, as always, for listening. If you want to catch us every Friday where you find all of your podcasts. And if you're hungry for other Purple Acorn shows, you can head to purpleacornnetwork.com and Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. And I'll see you next time on From the Desk with me, Jada Montemarano.